my presentation on time perception and social media. With the new infinite scrolling format exploding onto the social media stage through apps like TikTok, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts, social media is now more readily available than ever to all people, including, especially the youth. And there is a big problem with overuse of social media. In fact, 10% of Americans are addicted to social media. Internet users spend 2.5 hours per day on social media platforms, and teens themselves spend 1.5 hours per day on TikTok alone, which is, again, one of the apps with the infinite scrolling format. One thing about this format, short-form media videos are incredibly addictive, right? It provides a method of instant gratification to the user by giving them complete control over when and what videos they see. So if they're slightly bored of a video, they can simply flick their thumb or scroll and produce a new video that is more entertaining and constantly keep them in this immersed state. Additionally, algorithms attempt to find videos that are more entertaining for the user. So this feeds into that immersion state. Social media detracts from an individual's ability to complete tasks. It's correlated with impulsivity and low self-control, and in addition to sleep disturbance and depression. Now, why is this important to me? I am also a victim of the social media epidemic. I've wasted countless hours on my phone after school, before bed, when I have much, much better things that I could be doing. Now, like I said, it provides instant gratification, but it's also a method that is commonly used for procrastination and just as a distraction from other more important things in life. So I'm constantly losing track of time and spending far more time than I plan to on these apps. Now, not only is the adage time flies when you're having fun well known, but it is also scientifically proven through research to be true. Now, there's this idea of a flow state where you're so happily immersed in an activity that all other distractions are shut out. And when you're in a flow state, time is hastened. You have a quicker perception of time. So this infinite scrolling format that is now so widely available and used by so many people is also simulating this flow state through instant gratification and increasing lack of awareness of time. So it's much easier, research reports, that to lose track of time when using these apps. Okay. Additionally, low trait self-control, which is an individual's inherent self-control based on character qualities, is correlated with problematic social media use. Additionally, by increasing willpower, we can raise self-control, and this may look like focusing on long-term goals instead of instant gratification, prioritizing more important things than just scrolling mindlessly for entertainment. Increasing desire and the allure of social media and instant gratification and short-term pleasure lower self-control, and vice versa. So there's a clear gap here, and there's no interaction that has ever been studied, to my knowledge, between the infinite scrolling format and time perception. And this is likely because, again, it's such a new thing. Furthermore, the interaction between self-control and time perception has also never been studied, to my knowledge. So this kind of leads me into my research questions, which are, is there an interaction between infinite scrolling and time perception? And is there an interaction between self-control and time perception? And these two questions guided my method. So I have broken my method into two main studies. The objective of study one is to investigate the relationship between infinite scrolling and time perception, and the objective of study two is to investigate the relationship between self-control and time perception through the context of infinite scrolling. Here's the method for my first study. So, firstly, participants were recruited through the Robert B. Cialdini Behavioral Research Lab in the W.P. Carey Department of Marketing at ASU. We were sent out consent forms, and then once they agreed to participate in my study, participants were randomly assigned to one of two conditions. Now, the two conditions are watching a TV show on a streaming service on their phone, they used a personal account, or scrolling in this infinite scrolling format on one of the three apps, YouTube, TikTok, or Instagram, again on a personal account to make it more individual and atone to the individual participant. It's also worth noting that this task that was a 10-minute duration, so they either scrolled or watched TV for 10 minutes, and they were taken into a separate room to remove all distractions and try to simulate that flow state as accurately as possible. They were also told to not navigate to any other section of the app or their phone, and not asked to look at the time. Sorry, we did not ask them to not look at the time, but time was shown on the scrolling app because there's no way to hide it, and not shown on the TV because when you full screen, it gets rid of the time in the top corner, which is worth noting. So, the two main ways that I've decided to evaluate time perception during this task are through asking at what speed did time pass while you were on your smartphone, and how many minutes do you think passed when you were on your smartphone. And the speed question was used by Tom Mavis and Sackett in their study on hedonic time progression through enjoyment. And it has been used in a couple of other studies as well. The minutes question was more a personal curiosity of mine, as there's no current research investigating this causal relationship between time perception and infinite scrolling, so I had to make my own experiment. So my hypotheses for study one were that participants will have a shortened perception of time in the scrolling condition compared to the TV condition, and this is largely due to a larger flow state simulated and higher instant gratification, where they can immediately scroll rather than waiting for something to happen in the TV show, and that participants believe that time will pass at a higher speed in the scrolling condition, and participants believe that fewer than 10 minutes have passed, which again was the duration of the task, on average in the scrolling condition, and participants believe that fewer average minutes have passed in the scrolling condition compared to the TV condition. Here are the results of my first study. So, in relation to the speed question and the TV condition, I had 93 university students, and the average, this was evaluated on a 7-point Likert scale, 1 being time dragged and 7 being time flew. Now, the mean here you can see is pretty close to the middle, which was pretty normal on the scale, meaning that people in the TV condition did not really believe that time had passed quicker or slower than normal. And now, very similarly, in the scrolling condition, the mean was 4, which again is 4.02, which is very, very close to pretty normal, meaning, again, they did not believe that time had dragged or flew in the scrolling condition. And you can, again, see here, there is no correlation between either the TV condition or the scrolling condition, and you can see the p-value over there is greater than 0.05, which is not significant. And this was a one-way analysis of variation. Now, for the minutes question, which was how many minutes do you think have passed during the task, this is where we saw a discrepancy. So, in the TV condition, participants believe that only 10.28 minutes on average had passed, whereas in the scrolling condition, they believe that an average of 9.38 minutes had passed, which is not only less than the TV condition, but also less than 10 minutes of the 10-minute duration of the actual task, showing that despite their lack of awareness that time wasn't necessarily passing quicker, they didn't know how many minutes had gone by and underestimated. Okay. And you can see here my significant p-value indicating a correlation less than 0.05, just to demonstrate this relationship further. And again, this is a one-way analysis of variation. Now, importantly, this main effect was qualified by an interaction between gender and the minutes question. So you can see here, men were very closely were very similar between the two conditions, average of 9.37 minutes, 9.86, not really a difference there. But we really see the difference with women, which is worth noting. 10.88 minutes in the TV condition, but 9.1 minutes on average in the scrolling condition. And again, you can see this was a 2x2 analysis of variation. You can see the p-value here in the bottom right-hand corner demonstrating significance. Now here is my second study, my method. So firstly, I sent out a trait self-control scale that was measured, that has been used to measure the trait self-control in numerous studies developed by Tagny et al. In 2004. And I used the Atkinson Behavioral Research Lab at Rady at the University of California, San Diego, to collect my data. Here's an example of some of the questions on the scale. I had two conditions this time, but the only task that I used was the scrolling condition, because it was the intention of this study was not to test, again, the time perception on scrolling versus TV necessarily, but rather focus on self-control. So I have a high self-control condition, which is being manipulated using this tool, which is a New York Times article on how being productive in your free time is the best choice. And this primes the participant to consider long-term goals and decentivize instant gratification in their study, which again is in accordance with research that supports boosting self-control in the moment. And again, the manipulation to stimulate the low self-control condition is intended to encourage pleasure and justify instant gratification by prompting the participant to consider that being productive in their free time might not be the best choice. And again, I use the two same measures from the last condition, or from the last study, speed and minutes. Now, the hypotheses for the second study were that participants with higher trait self-control have a lengthened perception of time while scrolling than participants with lower trait self-control. And when primed, participants with higher situational self-control have a lengthened perception of time while scrolling than participants with lower situational self-control. It's also worth noting that the manipulation that I'm using here has already been used by researchers in the past. Here are my results. So, for the speed question, we found no correlation or interaction between the manipulation and either one of the questions. You can see the lack of significance there through a one-way analysis of variation. And likewise, there was no statistically significant interaction on the minutes item and the manipulation. However, it's worth noting here, you can see in the low self-control condition, participants anticipated or perceived a slightly higher minutes on average had gone by compared to the high self-control condition, which is directionally in accordance with my predictions, although not statistically significant. And this was, again, a one-way analysis of variation. Now, there was no revealed interaction between trait self-control, which is the independent variable, and time perception, which is both the dependent variables being both of the questions. And then here you can see the lack of significance there. And again, this is with both the speed question and the minutes question. On to my discussion. So, the first hypothesis is supported. Participants have a shortened perception of time in the scrolling condition compared to the TV condition. And this is significant because it supports the research that this flow state is applicable to the infinite scrolling format. So users are frequently losing track of time and have a shortened perception of time while using these infinite scrolling apps. Additionally, while they reported the speed of time to be passing normally, they inaccurately identified the number of minutes that had passed, which is also interesting from a psychological standpoint and allows for further research in that area. Now, interestingly, the main effect was qualified by this gender interaction that I mentioned earlier, mainly driven by women. So, teenage girls on average spend 0.8 hours more than boys on TikTok per day, which is pretty shocking. This means that they're especially susceptible to losing track of time and the implications of this study because they're going to be spending more time unintentionally on these apps. Additionally, research is already pointing towards the fact that teenage girls are especially susceptible to the harmful effects of social media previously mentioned, like depression, anxiety, lack of sleep, and other things, among other things. And this is not only specifically applicable to teenage girls, but also to everyone. As I mentioned earlier, we all use social media. It's important to be aware that while we're using social media, we're losing track of time, and we're spending time on these apps, and when we could be doing something that is much more valuable. Additionally, it's important to be aware of the harmful effects of social media, like a decrease in well-being, depression, sleep deprivation. So, now, my second hypothesis is not supported. No effect of either trait self-control or situational self-control was shown to be had on time perception. And this is slightly limited by a smaller sample size, 76 compared to 188 in the first study. And the directionally significant results could prove to be statistically significant with a greater sample size, but again, I'm not going to speculate, so I'll leave that open. Now, this is important. It's important to distinct that self-control does not have a relationship with time perception in the context of infinite scrolling. Now, while this means that these two do not have a relationship specifically in the infinite scrolling context, there's certainly still opportunity for future research to investigate this relationship in other fields, and I heavily encourage it. Thank you.
Can you say his name?
No, absolutely not.